Hey there, and welcome to the first episode of the Whole Picture podcast. I'm excited to be here. The goal of this podcast is to bring awareness back to the world on how to live our best lives, and for us to have a clear sight of the vision of humanity. In this podcast, we'll be exploring topics ranging from health to business, spirituality to religion, and anything that will give us the understanding of what our mission is in this world. For my first episode, I'll be joined by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Eade. Renowned for his wisdom and rabbinical knowledge, Rabbi Eade believes he holds the keys on how to navigate our spiritual existence in this world. In this episode, we discuss how to go about health and nutrition, what exactly is a soul, and what is the end goal for humanity. I hope you enjoy. What do you think most people miss when they get into the conversation about what it means to be healthy?
I think health is all about balance. I think the world doesn't see it in a balanced perspective, and we want to change that. That we're physical people, we're emotional people, we're psychological people, we're spiritual people. So it can't be that I'm working on my physicality and I'm getting all ripped, and all of a sudden my spirituality is getting put to the wayside. But it also can't be that my spirituality, I'm working and I'm growing and I'm thinking about lofty things, but I'm not thinking about my taking care of my body. Am I balanced? I remember when I first came into this world of well-being, somebody showed me a video of like a Mr. America thing. It was like a 60-minute thing. So this interview was Mr. America. It was like, it was like very intense. And they wanted to see, like, what is the daily life of a Mr. America, Mr. Universe? This guy was like, he was like a builder.
300 pounds.
Amazing. That's a specimen.
8-pack.
And he was like, so, okay. So I wake up, 6 a.m., go to the gym 4 hours, jump in a cold plunge, another 7 hours in the gym, I drink 12 eggs. I take 14 scoops of protein. Another 7 hours in the gym. I'm at bed this time. And the interviewer was like, wow, amazing. And then the interviewer said, excuse me for asking, but I noticed like you didn't say anything about like maybe like friends. Like, do you have any friends in your life? Like, friends? I don't have friends. Number 2, he has friends. I'm number 1. You want to be number 1? You cut out your friends. Number 2's got friends, not me. I remember thinking, I can't believe he's actually saying this. How could it be that this is called being the top, being healthy? And I think this is what's missed in the conversation, is that I see a very holistic picture. Is that I want to be physically healthy. I want to be emotionally healthy. How am I doing with my friends? Do I have good friends? How are my family relationships? Do I eat dinner with my wife and kids? Do I have a very well-balanced life? Am I thinking about also, is there a world after this world? That's also called health. The person walks around and is not thinking about, so where is this all going? I just go through life. I go to the gym, but I don't think about, maybe there's this place inside of me that's calling out to me and saying that there's something more. That's very imbalanced and it's very unhealthy. So I think the first step that we want to share with the world is that what we believe in, and this is all the Torah belief that we want to share with the world, is it's all about a complete holistic picture on well-being.
I like that, the whole picture.
The whole picture.
I think most of the time when people think about health, it's right to diet. When it comes to the conversation of diet, what do you think? Should I be vegan, paleo, carnivore? There's a million different diets out there. What is it? Almost feels like a trap. You don't even know where to go. And if you're this diet, you can never touch that diet. And if you eat this way, not that way. So
that's right. And every diet seems to be like, if you do this thing, then you'll be matzliach, you'll be successful. Yeah. If you don't do this thing, like forget about it. And the other book says, no, if you do the other guy's thing, you're not going to be successful. So I think that there's really 2 ways that we need to look at diet. Number 1, I don't like the word in general, diet. It's very restrictive and it gets people very, very, anxious and nervous. But really there's 2 parts to the story. The first part of the story is God forbid a person is very sick.
God forbid.
God forbid. God forbid a person has severe diabetes. God forbid a person has pickled his liver drinking. He doesn't have a choice. This person needs to be on a very strict regimen. He's not allowed, if the doctor says any drink might finish you, he can't say, you know what, I'm just going to have another drink.
One more drink. What's one more
Yeah,
drink?
what's one more drink?
One more straw on the camel's back.
That you cannot, there's nothing to talk about. He can't do that. A person who's, God forbid, a diabetic, severe, and the doctor said, you cannot have Coca-Cola. We don't know what this is going to do to you. This might really send you over. So for him, he has to be on a strict regimen. God forbid a person, other illnesses that are severe, he needs to be regimented enough. And this is where I respect certain very high motivated people that will keep to a diet and they're promoting that. That is for people that are, God forbid, very sick and they need to stick to that because their life depends on it. And we have a belief called Ushmartem me'od b'nafshosechem. The Torah says, be very healthy, take care of your health. And if something is going to send the person off, that's not okay. But then there's another category. Somebody's okay. He's not very sick. He's okay. But
he's getting by.
He's getting by, but he wants to be pumping.
Yeah.
He wants to be at optimal 8-cylinder, full octane living. I find for that person, generally a diet will throw him off.
Really?
In other words, I like to say, generally, if a person's okay, he should eat healthy, but not so healthy that he becomes unhealthy. Meaning, back to our first point, which is if everything about health is about being balanced, sometimes a person, what they want to experience is, let's say they have an association with something as, if I have this, I can't have this, I can't have this, I can't have this, I can't have this. Because the book told me you can't have, a scoop of ice cream. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? They're going to do the following. They're going to say, I can't have this. I shouldn't be doing this. There's the hot.
Yeah, and then there's the whole tub gone.
And what happens after that?
One pint leads to two.
And because it was a whole psychological, unhealthy feedback.
Just waiting to break free of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And therefore think about this. The body keeps score of these things. Think about the underlying psychology that now ice cream is associated with, like, I'm a naughty person. I shouldn't have done this. This is bad for me. Whereas Hashem made something called ice cream. God gave ice cream. Organic, free range, healthy. Let's say they got the best stuff available. And they're in a place where, you know what? They've always enjoyed ice cream. And they make a blessing on it. They thank the one who created the ice cream. And they're conscious in that moment. That experience of having a scoop of ice cream might be the best thing for them at that moment. That now they're in a balanced state of being. They don't need a lot of ice cream. They just live life in a very balanced way, making balanced decisions. Here's another example. There was a time in my life, personally, I was really into raw foods. I'm still into raw foods. I think we don't have enough living food in our diet. But there was a time that, as is common for many people, they're walking around with their Tupperware containers. They never really eat out places. They sort of are separate than the community. And there's something unhealthy about not eating with people, not being with people. For example, on Shabbos, let's say you're at somebody's house and the Rebbitzin, the hostess of the home, brings out a chocolate cake for dessert. And you happen to have a sweet tooth for chocolate cake. So at that moment, you've eaten healthy food throughout, and now you're going to have a piece of chocolate cake. At that moment, that is the healthy experience, to have that chocolate cake and stick with a piece and then enjoy the food experience with people. There's so many parts of Shulchan Aruch, which is the whole code of how we live life, to talk about eating in a healthy way, a holistic way. And therefore, I think there's two parts to dieting. If, God forbid, a person is very sick, then they have to be strict. There's nothing to talk about. But if a person is okay and they just want to get to higher level of well-being, Just see things in a balanced way.
No, I like that. The diet's just so much more than what you eat. It's about where you eat, who you eat with, when you eat. There's so much more to it.
Right? When you eat with people that are good vibes,
It's a very special feeling. You
feel
eat together, you're elevated together, you're in it together,
right?
Eating healthy together, you feel clean together.
It's amazing.
Problem is with the chocolate cake is then you have it on Friday night, but then Saturday night, Sunday night, and all of a sudden now chocolate cake's a staple in the diet, and that can lead you astray. So a lot of discipline. It also comes down to some just a bit of discipline to say, you know what, Friday night tonight I'm going to have it, no other night. I want to touch on something you said about making a blessing before you eat. What does that mean?
Making a blessing before we eat. So we have a concept that God created the entire world. And God created every single thing in this world. This world didn't come out of nowhere. This world came from God. And God is continuously creating the world. We talk about this every day in our prayers. That Hashem is what's called Mechadesh B'tuvay B'chol Yom Tomid Ma'aseh Bereishis. God is constantly bringing energy into the world. So God makes everything. And therefore, I really can't take something, even though I paid for it with my hard-earned money. Yeah, but who gave you the energy to go to work? Who's making your neurons fire? God is giving energy for all aspects of creation.
It's a very deep idea that everything in the entire existence comes from God. Not just this, not just that. That God created the world and left. The fact that God's sustaining, continuing, it's deep.
Hashem, God is here. This is a big, big part of our entire belief, is that God is here with us. So I have something, let's say I have a cup of water. So I want the water, I'm very thirsty. So the idea of a blessing is that I stop myself and I think, you know what? This water comes from somewhere. There's an origin to this. It didn't just show up here one day out of the blue. This is not random. I want to connect myself to the creator of the world when I have a cup of water, when I have a piece of cake, when I have a superfood green smoothie. Whatever a person might be having, they're connecting themselves to God through that experience. And then Hashem says, God is saying, I'm now going to give that to you. Now it belongs to you. I'm giving you this thing.
Could this be some of the reason why we even have to eat in the first place? Because it feels like eating and drinking and all these things we have to do are like a hindrance, right? You think there could be a chance that the reason why we eat and drink is only to bring God into more of our life.
So the holy books say that.
The holy books.
That they say that why did God make food? It could have been that we were born, you take one pill. It's a slow release pill. Your entire life, you have enough food in your system.
A much easier that way.
A lot more, right? You could get a lot more done, people might think. God creates a reality where we have this thing called hunger. That we naturally get hungry. Not just because we need to have food, but the hunger is reminding us that I'm really hungry. I'm hungry for something else. I'm hungry for a connection to the Creator. And throughout the day, you're reminded of that. All day long, I'm reminded, if a person's living with consciousness, I'm reminded that I'm really hungry for a relationship with God. And in the end of days, in the whole time to come, when there's going to be peace in the world, which is what we're getting ready for, we're going to realize that the hunger that we always had wasn't just for a piece of cake or anything else. It was really for relationship with God. That's the hunger that we're really into. There's another part of this, which is, why do we sleep?
Why?
God could have made it that 8
hours, 6 hours, what do I need? Hours.
I wish
sleep when I'm dead.
That's right.
That used to be the mentality. I feel like now we've shifted back into you want to get the right amount of sleep, because like sleep's very important. You know, depending on how you sleep is your day. Your day starts at the night. You miss everything. The day starts when you wake up, but the day actually started when you went to bed.
That's right.
If I slept for 2 hours, then my entire day, it's going to be thrown off. But on the same note, if I slept for 10 hours, my day is also going to be thrown off. So
a person should experiment. Sleep? So sleep in general is the same thing. Let's say you're some high-powered guy. I make moves. Yeah, I run the world. Yeah. I run this town, Yeah. No matter how powerful you are, you could be sitting in some high-powered board meeting. 12 hours, he's up. 24 hours, he's up. 36 hours. 40 hours.
40 hours.
All of a sudden, this high-powered person, no matter who he is, he could be Goliath. No matter who he is, he could be Alexander the Great. Before you know it, he'll start drifting off and fall asleep.
Yeah.
He cannot go. Nobody can go for so long without sleep. So the holy books teach us that God set up a reality where sleep exists to teach you that no matter how powerful you think you are, you always have to recharge.
When you say the holy books, I actually want to know what you're talking about, because when you think of the Old Testament, we think about just these stories that happen. They took place. Yeah, there's a few lessons, but what does it mean, the holy books?
The holy books, generally when we say that, we're referring to more kabbalistic books, is that we were given the Torah at Mount Sinai, and then the entire unfolding of the destiny of humanity included great luminaries that came to the world. I see you have some of them on your shelf here, the Ramchal and others. These were luminaries that shared great secrets with us throughout time that would give us insight on reality. In this case, about sleep, what sleep really means, about eating. There's so much to think about when we eat. There's, we call sparks inside.
What do you mean
food.
sparks?
Sparks mean, we talk about this a lot more in kabbalistic setting, that there's sparks. Sparks mean wherever you are in the world, there's an opportunity to connect to God.
Through these sparks?
Through the sparks. You might be at a gas station somewhere. You're pumping gas.
Yeah.
And you act nicely to the person behind you. You don't spill the gas on the floor or something. You act like we say a mensch. There was an opportunity that someone said, look at this person. He acts so nicely. He's considerate. He moved his car up so the other person could get into the pump behind him. He's thinking about other people around him, that the other people have this feeling of, this person's a conscious person. That's called connecting to a spark in that place, i.e., revealing that God is there.
What does that actually do for a person?
It allows them to know that God is everywhere and is an opportunity all the time. We have a concept that we do everything with God consciousness. When a person sometimes comes closer to Jewish thought, he learns about very interesting things that we do. For example, there's a way that we put on our shoes.
Which way?
You put your right shoe on first, and then your left shoe on
if first. I go left and right?
Ooh! So why do we put our right shoe on first and our left shoe? So the first question is, what does God care about my right shoe and my left shoe? What does he care about my right shoe and my left shoe?
That's a good question.
So the simple meaning is, you're anyways going to put on shoes, unless you're a non-shoe person. But let's say, for the most part, people wear shoes in this world. You're anyways going to put your shoes on in the morning. So God says, I'm going to give you an opportunity to connect to me also then. Not just when you go to synagogue, when you go to your places of worship, there you'll connect to me. Every single moment of the day is an opportunity for God consciousness.
I want to talk about consciousness more. What do you actually believe consciousness is? What do the Jews believe consciousness is?
So
I feel like, to a degree, we have a very narrow sight on consciousness. What do you think?
How do you think? How do you think that the world sees consciousness?
We see consciousness as the way we view the world, through we each have our own, so to speak, level of consciousness that I might see through a very narrow and someone else might see through a bigger frame. So what does it actually mean? Because everyone's so fascinated about consciousness, elevating their consciousness, meditation, psychedelics, whatever it may be. What does it actually mean? What even is consciousness? It feels like the human, we have a different level of consciousness. You know, you look at an animal, it isn't quite the same. I haven't seen an animal run for president, talk about diet, sit down on a podcast. So what does it actually mean?
So when we talk about consciousness and we talk about God consciousness or elevating our consciousness, really what we're talking about is seeing the world through our soul as opposed to our body consciousness. Because we have two parts to us. We have a soul, and then we have what's called more of an animal. We're a soul inside of this body. So either I can live from body consciousness, which essentially means I'm just an intelligent animal, and therefore I do all sorts of animalistic things. I take care of what's good for me. I do what's going to be good for me. I eat. I procreate. I do basically animal things, but with more intellect than a baboon. But when we're talking about God consciousness, we're talking about that God blew into us a soul. There's a soul that was blown into us. This is metaphorical.
Yeah.
That it was breathed into us, which means that God...
What do you mean breathed into us?
When we talk about breathing, what we mean is that God is giving us, he's transmitting to us something from the essence of God. God is putting into us an undiluted power, consciousness of what God wants in the world. When I can tap into that.
So God wants the soul in the world. I just want to cover these bases. God wants the soul in the world.
God wants us to live from our soul as opposed from just what we would say would be instincts. That entire experience is what we call free will.
So it begs the question, then why do we even have a body if we're only meant to be living through the soul?
So the reason we have is because God set up a world where he wants us to live through free will. Free will means, really what you could ask is, why didn't God just put us into heaven? Just put us into Shemayim.
Yeah.
Just give me an island, give me a yacht. We're going to drive Maybachs everywhere and just, we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Why do we have to go through this struggle? And I think if we take a step back, what we see is that we wake up and sometimes we feel motivated to do positive things. And sometimes we feel that we do things that make us self-destruct. And any thinking person, and I think a lot of the world and humanity is starting to clue into this now, is that they're thinking, like, who am I? I have behaviors that I know are positive, a higher self, if you will. And then I have behaviors that I feel are just, when I look at myself in the mirror after I do X, Y, and Z, I don't respect myself.
Yeah.
And for a person who's a thinking person and they want to grab the life by the horns and say, what is going on inside of me? I don't want to be living through that. So the answer is that you have two parts to you. You have a higher self called the godly self, your soul consciousness. And then we have a lower self, which is really, like we said, this instinctual animal self. That is the place where free will exists. Am I going to live in the world and do positive things and try to help humanity, bring peace to the world, blessing to the world? The God consciousness always wants to do good, see blessing and beauty and compassion and love and everything that's positive, unification consciousness. And the body is always looking at separation consciousness, what's good for me. For example, a relationship. Many relationships in the world are I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine.
Yeah.
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, like a business arrangement. So really, I'm helping you because I'm going to get something out of the deal.
Yeah, you're not really thinking about the other, you're thinking about yourself more.
That's right.
What can I get?
That's right.
How is this going to benefit me?
That's right. And there's even higher levels of that. For example, let's say somebody gives charity. They give charity for people in need. But do you know why they give? Not because they really deeply care about the person they're giving to, but because it hurts them to feel that someone else is lacking. So when I give, it's like, oh, okay, I feel better about myself. Now, thank God that people are helping other people. That's at least a higher level as opposed to giving nothing and helping nobody.
Yeah.
But imagine that we can get to a state of consciousness of giving for the sake of giving.
Is that the goal? Is the goal to give just for the sake of giving?
That's a very high level. The highest level, the good books, the Kabbalah books talk about, is receiving for the sake of giving. Because God wants to give us. So to speak, we're receiving blessing. Hashem made this whole world for us, for the sake of giving, i.e. giving and building a world of blessing, of goodness. But God wants to give us the best life possible. The Kotzker Rebbe, who is a very, very great and wise...
People don't know, who is that?
The Kotzker...
And what is a Rebbe?
A Rebbe is a luminary. A Rebbe, the Rebbes we're talking about are great, great luminaries in the world that brought humongous level of consciousness into the world. And we have an unbroken tradition and an unbroken teacher to student passing these teachings down.
From where? Where does this all sprout back to?
It goes all the way back to Mount Sinai. And it goes back to Abraham, and it goes back to really Adam. That there was always teachings that were being given. So there was a Rebbe in the 1700s and 1800s. There was many luminaries during that time. We have a concept that whenever you have big, big light come into the world, there'll also be big challenge in the world. And these things were spoken about in our holy books, in the Zohar, etc. Then in the times of the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of energy coming into the world.
Yeah.
There was also energy, spiritual energy coming to the world. So one of these great rabbis, his name was the Kotzker Rebbe. And
How long ago was this?
in the 1700s.
Okay.
1700s, 1800s. So the Kotzker Rebbe was like a wonder child. He was a boy, but he was a brilliant person. And they asked him, they said, "We hear you're very, very smart. Can you tell us what is the greatest distance in the world?" So he said, "That's easy, from heaven to earth." So they said, "How far is that?" He said, "It's 1 arm's breadth, 1 amma."
Which is?
They started laughing. 1 arm's breadth, 1
really?
amma.
Like a meter, maybe.
Yeah, a
Just
little bit less than a meter.
Yeah.
So they started laughing. "We hear you're so smart. How could it be that heaven to earth is 1 arm's breadth?" He said, "Yeah, it's the distance between your head and your heart."
Wow.
To bridge between heaven and earth is like bridging between things I know in my head and in my heart. So then they asked him something else. They said, "If you're so smart, also tell, where is God found? You speak about God being everywhere. Where can man find him?" And he answered, "God is found wherever man lets him in."
Mm.
So this is what it means, that to receive, to give, is that God says, "I want a relationship with you. If you're turning away from me, you're not letting me in." So much of what we're all about is helping people let in God consciousness, which includes, like we began with, balance, physical consciousness, emotional consciousness, psychological consciousness, spiritual consciousness.
I want to go back to something you said, that there's this unbroken chain from Mount Sinai. Most people look at Mount Sinai as just another story. It's another mountain. What do you mean we have an unbroken chain from Mount Sinai? And you actually reference it back to Adam. So could you just elaborate on that a little bit deeper?
So this is a big thing for us, is that we have a book called the Torah. Nobody could deny it exists. Inside the Torah, it says that 600,000 people heard God speak. And we all accepted this. We all received this. This is something that we're still talking about today. How did this start? This itself is an authenticity of the Torah that we received then, that it was given to the people who accepted it. And it says, we all saw this. So if I just showed up one day and said, "You guys all saw this happen." "Dad, did you see this?" "Bro, did you see this?" I didn't see this. Nobody has ever made this claim ever again, that an entire nation of people heard God speak. Inside the Torah, it tells us that you're to pass this down to your children. This is called the Passover experience. Pass this down. And it's very, very interesting that for so many Jews, even those that have a little bit left temporarily, many still have a Passover Seder.
Yeah, it's a very special thing.
That they know that deep in their core, in their soul, that this is connecting them. So this is something that the entire generation experienced. They all have Passover Seders. They all have It's still going on until today. This is what it means, an unbroken chain. Not to mention, we have primary source material inside of our holy books all around the world. It links. This person was the student of this person. And it's cross-referenced everywhere. We all say this person is this person's student, and this person was this person's student. So you have countless sources, primary sources, manuscripts, and an unbroken oral tradition linking all of our teachings to the ones who came before us, to the ones who came before us. Unbroken, going all the way back to Mount Sinai. This is solid.
How do you know, if someone's grappling with the fact that this book came from God, how did one know it truly came from God and not from man? Because the fact that it's even written implies that there's a chance it could have came from man. How does someone who's really struggling with that, because everyone has a book. There's a million books out there and everyone claims it's from God. So what's the difference between the Torah, Old Testament, so to speak, this book and other books?
So a person should look at the evidence. There's so much evidence that points this is something that was not a natural occurrence. Inside the Torah itself, it points to that this is not something that could happen through natural means. The Torah makes predictions that have all come true. The Torah says supernatural things. Once you start linking that this is something that has evidence that points towards it, the person, just like everything in one's life, you make intellectual decisions. The person's going to cross the street, so he makes an intellectual decision. Did I see the car coming? Did the person see me? Is there enough time for me to cross the street? Every single one of these things, I make a calculation and I live my life based on that. When you invest money, I hope you make intellectual decisions. You don't just say, you know what? I got a good feeling about this, even though the guy has never made a penny in his life. You have to make calculated intellectual decisions. A person has to go to a doctor, let's say. You don't just flip through it. In my days, they had something called the yellow pages. Flip through the yellow pages, oh, that guy's name sounds cool. I guess he'll be my heart surgeon. No, you take this person has the best track record. He's done 10,000 of these surgeries. This makes sense. A person crosses a bridge. How do you know the bridge is not made out of plasticine? Maybe a bridge has bridges collapsed in the history of the world. Unfortunately, yes. Hashem Yirachim. But I see there's evidence that's telling me that this bridge is safe. There's cars on the bridge. The people that made it were engineers. I see this bridge has stood for many, many years. I'm making a real decision based on intellect and saying that this is something that makes sense. The Torah has so much evidence that supports it.
It came from God. You're saying there's a lot of evidence in that.
That it came from God.
Evidence that it makes sense. Because many people can agree on that it all makes sense. It's all nice. It's a good way to live your life. But to fathom that, because God's beyond us, right? We're finite. God's infinite. This idea of divine. How can divine come into finite?
So this is one of the great miracles of creation, and that the Kabbalah deals with. And the Kabbalah is trying to explain and share with us, those who can understand the secrets, how an infinite God is communicating with a finite world.
I want to talk about this for a second. You said secrets. Is this all meant to be a secret, or is this meant to be revealed? Because a lot of people also feel that when it comes to Judaism, it's so kept in, it's so insulated. People look at Jewish communities, they say that they're only to themselves, they don't let outsiders in. To convert to Judaism, very tough thing. So is this just a Jewish thing, or is this a world thing?
We're here for the world. We're here for humanity. Our mission is called Or Lagoyim. We're here to bring a light.
What does that mean?
To be a light to all the nations. That Hashem said, God said, I want to give this Torah to the whole world. God was offering it to everybody. The Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We said we want it. It means a lot of extra responsibility, but we want that responsibility. We invite the responsibility. But it means we have a mission. The mission, though, is not just for us. The mission is for the entire of humanity, to bring humanity to the desired destination, to help humanity get to a place of peace and love and blessing for everybody.
Why do you think we're so far from peace? It feels like everyone's fighting. No one's united. We feel so separate in this world. I look at someone else. Someone looks at me. We're two worlds apart. It feels like there's all these different groups. Everyone's got a different opinion. Everyone wants it to go their way. Wow. If this is all true? If the book's true, if God had this big plan, then why does it seem like we're so far from that?
I think one of the reasons is because we have a soul and we have a body. In the world of body, we're very, very separate. In the world of soul, we're all one. So we've moved away from our soul consciousness. In the world of our soul, we're all totally unified in this world.
We're unified right now?
Right now, we're unified. And what we want to do is bring that soul consciousness to the world, that we're all unified. Because if we could see ourselves as soul, then we're less bothered by the differences. It's interesting. Adam in the Garden of Eden. Let's go back to the garden.
Yeah.
We'll go for a walk in the garden.
Is that where it all began?
It all begins in the garden.
Okay.
When Adam is created, so we're taught that he stretched from the heavens to the earth. And he stretched both sides, all the way from east to west, from heaven to earth.
His physical essence stretched across the entire world.
What it means is that his soul, he was soul. Soul is very big. So Adam was very, very big. If you tried to find his body, you'd have to squint, and then maybe you'd make a wisp of a body out. If you really looked carefully. Yeah. You just saw soul. After he ate from the tree, the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra,
which is the tree of life?
The tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Tree of knowledge. Eitz Hadas means tree of knowledge?
Means the tree of connecting to both good and evil.
Okay.
That tree that he was seduced into eating, the snake said, eat this, you'll know a lot.
So I just want 1 second. So the tree, before he ate from the tree, had no knowledge of good versus evil?
It was all good. It was all good. There was no difference between Adam wearing tefillin to Adam having relations with Chava, with Eve. Everything was holy. In the world of soul, everything was connected to God.
So if everything was so great, why did it even have the opportunity from the tree?
So this is a very deep question. And this is something that the snake was seducing Adam into, which was, Adam, think about this. Right now, how are you going to be close to God? God gave you perfection. We always say closeness in physicality is measured in distance.
Yeah.
But closeness in spirituality is measured in similarity. So how do I get close to God? I have to be like God, similar to God.
What do you mean like God?
Similar. I need to have the qualities of God. So nobody gave God his perfection.
No.
God's perfection, God is infinite, his perfection is intrinsic. He's the master of his perfection.
Mm.
But me, if I'm just given this perfection, then I'm in a certain way diametrically opposed because I'm so different than God.
Yeah.
So Adam, it could have been that Adam would have been in the state of perfection and he would have had a very low level of free will, just refining more and more and more.
Okay.
The snake said, though, if you eat from this, you're going to bring darkness into the world. Because what's going to happen? You're going to go from being very soul conscious to become much more physically conscious.
It sounds like an awful thing.
So
the snake said you're going to bring darkness.
The snake said, well, you're going to be like God.
Okay. And
he wasn't lying, but there would be a very big risk that would come with that, which would be that all this confusion would come to the world. The Eitz Hadas, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, means Adam now would become connected to good and evil, but it would be confusing to him. He wouldn't know what's good and what's evil. So after Adam eats, what happens? If you look at Adam, our sources teach us that he shrunk. He was no longer this giant soul. What it means is that before Adam ate, you saw soul. If you squinted, you'd see his body. After Adam ate, you saw body, and this is the world we're in now. And if you really squint, you could see soul. So I walk around outside, it flipped. I walk around outside, we're hanging out with friends. You know, you see a bunch of guys, this one's eating a piece of schnitzel, this one's doing this one's, lifting his biceps. We're very body conscious, generally. And if you're sitting together with a friend, having a DMC, staying up late together, you look into their eyes and you make out like a wisp, that there's something deeper in there. There's a soul that's in there. That's the world that we're in now. Mm. But what we really want, now, why does that have a benefit? Is that now that I have a lot more instinctual consciousness, I have much stronger free will. I could choose my soul. I could identify with my soul. And thereby, I'm becoming the master of my perfection. Therefore, my perfection is not something which is just given to me. It's something that I become the master of. It's like intrinsic to me. That makes me like God. This is something that's an amazing thing, that it puts free will at the center of life, is that your decisions matter.
You mentioned Kabbalah. What actually is that? People hear this term all the time, but what does it actually mean? What even is this? Is it separate from the Old Testament, the Old Book?
It's all
so
one.
To speak?
It's all one. It's that in this world we have body and we have soul. The Kabbalah is like the deepest soul inside the Torah. In other words, I'm hanging out with friends. Everything about Torah is about a relationship. It's all about a relationship. Now, you have relationships with people. Some of them are more basic relationships. Maybe the crossing guard when you're growing up. You say, oh, thank you, thank you, Cheryl. It's so sweet of you to help us every single day cross the street. It's a very nice relationship, but it's not so deep. It's basic and it's cordial, and it should be such. Then you have other relationships that are deeper. You might have employee-employer relationships. Everything is about relationships. Then there's relationships that are deeper. You have more acquaintances, and you have good friends, then you have really good friends, maybe you have a best friend. Mm. And you go deep into life together. Talk about things. You talk about secrets together. Kabbalah is all of that. Is the deepest relationship that God wants to have with us. Is I want to reveal things to you. It would be like two lovers. So people who really love each other, they will share things with each other that are very profound. They'll write each other love letters. Now, if somebody, God forbid, would take someone's love letter, steal it, go into the marketplace, say, let me read this love letter out. Yeah. Everyone would laugh. It would be inappropriate. It's because there's secrets that only those two people know. It's poetic. They're alluding to things that they understand that other people don't. And you need a lot of maturity to talk about these things. So Kabbalah means going deeper and deeper into that relationship. This is what it's all about, is helping people have more and more mature relationships. It's sad to me that there's a lot of shallowness in the world. Kabbalah is about giving much deeper relationships to people with their parents, with their spouses, with their kids.
Now, is this open to everyone, or is this only a select few?
Well, you need to be pretty mature. As a person matures more, when someone's young, let's say, you have a concept that they don't know so much. They're young. They're lacking nuances. The greatest thing you can give a 4-year-old is a lollipop. As people mature, they start refining their view on the world. They start looking to more things. Either that becomes they just want bigger toys. If I wanted a lollipop, then I want a bike, then I want a motorcycle, then I want a BMW, and I just gets like more bigger toys.
Yeah.
Or a person says, those toys are fine. I don't mind having those toys. But what I really want is I want deeper relationships. And as people mature, they're able to handle deeper connections with people. So this is a topic, this is an area that we're really trying to give everybody. And we have an idea that if a person wants to learn Kabbalah, they should be a more refined person. But we have an idea that there's an analogy from one of the great rabbis, the Rashab. And he said that there was a king. You heard this one before?
No, I haven't.
So the king had a son. And the king's son got very, very sick. And all the king's horses and all the king's men, they couldn't put him back together again. And the king's son, all the doctors came and nobody could heal him. The king had one wise man that lived on the outskirts of the town. And he said, I can help you, son. And he said, okay, tell me what. So he said, but I just need something unconventional. I need your crown. I need the crown of the king. And he took the crown and he went to the jewel on top of the crown of the king. And everyone was like, you can't take that. No, anything but that. Don't take that. He said, I need the crown jewel. And he says, I need to take the crown jewel and I'm going to grind it up. No, don't do that. It's very dangerous. Don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do that. And he says, I'm going to mix it together, put some herbs in it, and I'm going to feed it to your son. And he fed it to the son, and the son got well. And he said, this is what Kabbalah is. It's the greatest jewel. It's the most precious thing of the king. And it's so powerful. And in the previous generations, we weren't so sick. But as the generations went on, we became more spiritually numb. And therefore, we're taught that in the end days, we're going to need stronger medicine. And we're going to need some of these ideas to wake us up from our slumber. And therefore, these are ideas. Certain things will be for certain more mature, advanced students, but other things will be for everybody to help bring healing to the world, that people start healing their inner world and start being able to have more mature relationships.
I want to talk about sickness for a second. You mentioned that does spirituality, does that lead to physical sickness? So if one's spiritually sick, so to speak, maybe disconnected, very tied into his day-to-day practices, isn't connected to, let's say, God, or ultimately isn't connected to God, could that lead a person to being physically sick, or is it the other way around? Does physical sickness lead to spiritual sickness?
So we believe that everything starts in the spiritual world. In other words, we're here to live with spiritual truths, and we're here to live with them in this physical world. If we misalign from the rules of the spiritual world,
Yeah.
God will start talking to us and waking us up. If somebody stubs their toe on their right foot, we have sources that tell us that all your body parts are connected to certain spiritual realities.
Okay.
And therefore, there's a symbol that didn't just happen for no reason. There's a message for you that something needs to be fixed. Not just you have to go and put a little bandage on there and, and rest it, put some ice on there. You should also do that. But there's a message that we're being told.
Through that body part.
Through that body part. Here's one example. We're taught that the liver is connected to anger.
Okay.
That if a person has liver problems, God forbid, it means there's something in the world of his anger that needs to work on. That anger is a very bad character trait.
Yeah. Feels like so many people nowadays are angry. Everyone lives
also,
in this state of anger.
Yes.
Stress, anger, they all lead together. You can almost group them together.
Yeah. And therefore, there's also liver problems, a lot. We need to try to help a person fix certain spiritual realities. Also, go to whatever healthcare professionals you need for your liver. But realize it's not just about the liver. It's about a much bigger story.
Something much deeper going on.
Much deeper going on. Lung things. There's all sorts of things that relate to how we are interacting in the world and to learn, to see those messages.
I really do like that. When it comes to, though, the physical body, where would you tie emotional, right? We got a mental health, it almost seems like we have a mental health crisis where people, more than not, are depressed, they're anxious. We throw around these terms all the time. But that isn't quite physical. So what even is emotional? What even is that whole
The emotions do have
state?
Roots in physicality. You can map things out in the neurological system. That being said, a lot of our mental crisis that we're in, yes, is that we've lost touch with our healthy self-identity. We are a soul. Being a soul means that you're self-confident, you're happy with who you are, you're confident in your existence. There's something nowadays, people are always posting pictures of themselves, and you don't post
but
pictures,
only the best picture.
Only the best ones. So you start looking at other people's profiles. So this is a newer thing. This didn't exist 20 years ago. And you could follow people. You could track people.
Yeah.
He's doing this, she's doing this, she's doing this. But you know me, I'm just sitting here looking at all of them. And probably they're all doing the same thing.
Big trap. It's a trap. You get led down.
So I start thinking like, she's got the best life. He's got the best life.
I've got the worst.
I've got the worst life. And I'm comparing myself to everyone else. If we start learning about who we are, we start learning that we have something so atomically powerful inside of us called the soul.
Yeah.
That is almost infinite. It's so powerful. And it's a technology, our soul. And Kabbalah speaks a lot, especially Hasidic thought, speaks a lot about the power of the soul.
Yeah.
You start identifying with the soul as a soul, things start fixing themselves. Now, I'm not advocating a person stops whatever medical treatments they're doing.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing, but also begin to add a new way of thinking, which is I want to re-identify with who I really am at my core. And then when I identify that that's who I am, other things start falling away.
So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, you know what, I'm sold, I'm bought, I want to start working on my soul more, my spirituality. What are some practical steps? Because let's say someone's not Jewish. Let's say someone has never learned any Old Testament, any Judaism at all, but he wants to begin this process of identifying more as his soul, connecting more to spirituality. What's something he could do?
There's people all around the world that can help teach, that you could go to learning groups that will start to talk to
Jewish learning groups?
Jewish learning groups are great. There are people around the world that could help you identify with the real you. The real you. And there's many layers to this.
Where does it begin?
For some people, it begins that they get into healthy habits. Make your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
They start getting into healthy habits. And all of a sudden their life starts shifting. For other people, they just start hanging out with positive friends. Now, it's an important thing. You mentioned young people. I remember, people in high school, there's a certain thing. You go through high school, these are your buddies, your high school buddies. Usually the end of high school has some type of a prom, and everybody's in the limo. And everyone's like, clinking their...
It's like a movie.
Yeah, clinking their... Because they saw it in a movie, so they were trying to copy.
Exactly.
So they're clinking their glasses, and they're saying, you know what? We're going to be together forever. Yeah. Love you, bro. Even this one's going to this college, this one's going here, this one's going over there. Nah, but like forever. We're going to be forever together. And they mean it.
Yeah.
And our kids are going to play together, and we're going to do stuff together. And there's a certain reality that everybody experiences this. It's hard sometimes to see it when someone's in high school, is that oftentimes it happens like the first year after high school, is people realize that naturally people kind of go in different directions. That's usually a time where people are really trying to discover who they are, not just as part of the group of my high school identity, but really who I am. And people start, and then you see the friends that I thought I was going to be with them forever, but I'm kind of going in my own way. And I think that's a teaching that we should think about, which means even now, I want to choose the people that I feel are going in the right direction. It doesn't mean you're abandoning your friends, unless people are like seriously sick and unhealthy, and you should probably check up on them. You should pray for their well-being, but start choosing healthy friends. Start going in a healthy life direction.
What would you say to someone who his entire day is moving, wakes up 5 a.m., goes to bed midnight, unfortunately, but his entire day it's busy, everything feels like he's always achieving, but yet still feels like he's not achieving at the end of the day. And sometimes he comes to the end of the day and he's like, I actually didn't do anything. But if you look back, he did all these things. What would you say to someone in that position?
So there's a thing, we're into being busy. We're into being busy, but make sure that you're busy doing the right things. In Egypt, we had a concept, Pharaoh. We have a very holy book, talk about holy books, and I recommend this to everybody. The Path of the Just.
By who?
By Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal, a great kabbalist from Italy. And he wrote a book on personal development, on how to essentially perfect one's character and perfect the world at the same time.
You have it in English?
They have it in English.
Okay, perfect.
And a bestseller. Highly recommend that. I recommend to everybody around the world.
All right.
Okay? So this sefer, this book.
What does sefer mean?
Sefer means a book. It means a holy book. Okay. This holy book describes that one of the tactics of Pharaoh was keep these slaves so busy that they don't even know that they're slaves anymore.
Wow.
Keep them so occupied that they never have time to question, what are we really doing here? So I remember when I was young and I heard a quote, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. So that quote really shook me because what do you mean? He's busy. He doesn't have time for it. No.
Yeah.
It's a psychology.
He's so busy, I'll give it to someone else.
That's right. It's a psychology. He's always producing. He's always performing. He's always doing. However, you could be producing the wrong things, like making bricks, and you're so busy, you don't even have time to think, is this the life that I should be leading? I'm waking up at 5 a.m, I'm going to bed at midnight, but am I really doing what I feel I should be doing?
I'm spending time with my kids, my wife, my family.
I one time heard from my dear friend Rabbi Dovber, he said, even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat.
Oh.
You won the race. Okay, no, but you're a rat. You're in it. You're in the cycle just going over and over and over and over. So I'm busy doing what? Even the things that we're busy in, we always need spaces of time to reflect on what we're doing. So for example, one of the places that we see this is our Torah. It has black letters, Hebrew letters, and then spaces. No letter can touch the next letter. The whole Torah becomes invalid if a letter is touching another letter. Because every letter needs space. Furthermore, there's places inside the Torah where there's big gaps. There's some sections that have gaps all over the place. What does this mean? This is a concept called revach ben aparshios, which means there's space between the sections where God was telling Moses. He's saying, I'm going to give you a download of information, but stop and think about it. Meditate on it. Integrate it And then you could apply this wisdom in your life. So a person's always going, and he doesn't give himself time to think.
Doesn't even breathe. He's just...
Doesn't even breathe, which is a very important thing to do.
Breath.
You need to breathe.
Mm.
Breathing itself is a very powerful thing, which we forget to do.
Breathwork's already a very powerful thing.
Breathwork.
It's coming back.
It's coming back.
Into breathwork, so into meditation.
The breath is a very fascinating thing because it's something which bridges the conscious and the subconscious. There's different parts of my body, some that are under my conscious control. Lift up your right hand. That's pretty, okay? There you go. Shkoach mental. You did it. Okay? Then there's other things, decide to have your heart beat. Okay? Yeah, you're going to beat it? Okay, beat. Okay, I didn't control that one. Okay, let's try this one. You realize your heart beating is not under your direct control.
Yeah.
But then there's things in your body which you have control, but they also happen without your control, like your breath.
Mm.
You're breathing naturally, but you can completely control your breath at the same time. So the idea of I have things that are under my conscious control, and I have things that are my non-conscious, subconscious control, but then I have things which are a medium that bridge the gap between my conscious self and my subconscious self. That's called the breath.
Wow.
So the breath, when a person gets into conscious breathing, what they're essentially doing is they're linking their conscious self to their subconscious self, and they're able to receive great wisdom from that, as they can connect to their subconscious universe.
Does the Torah speak about breath? Speak about breath work?
So we find the soul is breathed in, and the word for soul in Hebrew is neshama, which is the same word for neshima, to breathe.
Really?
Soul and breath, it's all one thing. That's why every practice, all spiritual practices will always include some breath work. And yes, there are kabbalistic books that talk about more detailed breath work. But I would say for many people around the world, there's a person named Wim Hof, and he has done excellent work to help people with breath work, of doing faster breathing, then slowing down the breath, then breath holding. This is amazing, amazing. And you feel elevated. You feel, he says, you get high in your own supply. Okay? Yeah, you do. When you connect and you oxygenate your body with breath and air, it's a very, very powerful thing. So we take breath work and then we guide it into consciousness, specifically God consciousness.
He's also very big into ice baths. What do you think about those?
Those are great. Highly recommend that people get involved in cold plunges. We've, as an ancient people, always believed in something called a mikveh, which essentially was a cold water plunge, unless you had some fancy setup where you could warm the water. But we've been breaking through the ice for millennia to jump in and to go into what's called a mikveh experience. And we're very, very into that.
What you're saying is a cold water experience.
Cold water experience.
Because the amount of health benefits that can come from cold water is endless.
Highly recommend, if a person can afford one, go and get an ice bath. Some people would say, I'll just go into my freezer, get a bunch of ice, pour it into the bath. You could do that. But if you can afford one, cold shower is excellent. And it's practical and you can do it. And generally, it's good to start warm and then end cold.
Really?
Some people, if they only do cold, it's just too much for them. Start warm and end cold. It's interesting. The Gemara says a fascinating thing. The Gemara talks about different health things. And one of the health things it says is that a person should always end cold. Even if he has a hot bath or sauna experience, end cold. And it gives an analogy. It says if a person is fashioning a sword, imagine you're somewhere fashioning a samurai sword. So you take the steel and you put it deep into the cauldron of the fire and you're fashioning the sword. Okay, and then you go out and you take the sword and you want to go to swing it and the sword is, it's still hot, so it's flimsy. But what do you do after you take the sword out of a hot cauldron? You put it into cold water and it makes it stark.
Makes it firm.
Makes it very firm. So to our body. When you come out of a hot shower, you're like, you're a bit flimsy. When you go cold afterwards, it makes a person solid and firm. It's very, very important.
What even is, you just mentioned the Gemara. What actually is that?
The Gemara is the oral tradition unbroken from Mount Sinai, passed down. So rabbi to student, through endless links in the chain, all the way down to us.
So on Mount Sinai, that was the place where everything was received?
Everything was received, both the written tradition, i.e. the Torah, and the oral tradition that was received by Moses and then passed down.
So was there more in the oral, or was there more in the written?
There's more in the oral.
How
Much more. Way more. Way more. The written Torah is finite. It has this many letters. You can't have more. You can't have less. The oral tradition is vaster than the sea. And we invite people to come and join us and to learn Gemara with us.
And so how do you learn the oral? You speak? I mean, oral implies
You speak. The way that we do things is that we are together in a group learning environment, and we're speaking about ideas going back and forth. And we highly, highly invite people to come and join us for that experience.
So what do you think some of the end goals are here? Because I feel like there's almost an awakening happening in the world, and people are slowly starting to realize that there's so much more, and that the problems we have, I mean, we're so deep into these problems that there has to be something else. So what do you think the end goal is here for us?
The end goal for humanity is peace. The end goal for humanity is blessing.
What actually is peace, though? Because the definition of peace is just an absence of war. Is that truly peace?
It's not. No, peace means that there's an absolute harmony, that creation is connecting to the Creator, that there's going to be abundance, spiritual consciousness, spiritual blessing, physical blessing, that we're looking forward to a time that there's going to be goodness filling the world, revealed goodness filling the world. This is the end goal for all of us, is that we're all going to be unified together. It's all about unification.
The entire world.
The entire world.
Wow.
Unified together.
Not just the Jewish people.
The Jewish people, we just have a job to help bring that unification. That's our mission.
That's very special. What does it mean that there's only one God?
God is infinite. So when we say that God is one, we don't mean one in the category of gods. Meaning that's what we call softcore monotheism. So it's like, yeah, there's one God. Like, I'm not going to Zeus or anything, but there's only one God. But there's like a bunch of stuff. There's there's microphones. There's my watch. There's God and a world.
Yeah,
that's softcore monotheism. The Jewish people are here to bring hardcore monotheism, which means God is one. There's nothing but. We're inside of God right now.
Wow.
All of us are inside of God right now. And God knows creation because he knows himself. One of the analogies that's brought in the Tanya is the Tanya was a book. It was essentially the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad sage.
Like in New York.
So he's from the last of the lineage. So his great, all the way back to the beginning. So who lived in Liadi in Ukraine. So he was a great, wise sage. And in the 1700s, a student of the Maggid from Mezhbich, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, which we'll have to speak another time about more. All of this large topic of all these great sages who were these luminaries that brought great consciousness to the world. So he spent his entire life speaking about God unity. That was his big thing that he brought to the world. Absolute unification. That was his whole thing. He was also a brilliant composer of music, which, by the way, as a side point, if you want to really get a sense of someone's inner life and inner world, listen to their music. A person's music is very revealing of what's going on within. People who are great and holy people, I see that you have King David's Tehillim here, the Psalms of David. King David was the greatest.
Songs of David.
The songs, he was the greatest king, poet, musician.
It's very special about Tehillim because it's actually a lot of people learn Tehillim. They love Tehillim. Whether you're Jewish or not, the whole world knows Tehillim.
The whole world loves Tehillim.
Yeah. So everyone loves David. Everyone knows David.
That's right. David is the king.
Really?
And David is the father of the Mashiach, who's going to usher in the final redemption for all of humanity. So the Alter Rebbe was a great musician. So he focused on unity consciousness. So he had one analogy that was very powerful. And he's bringing this from the old Kabbalists. He said that God is like a sun. He's not a sun. This is just an analogy.
The sun or a sun?
Like the sun. Like the sun.
Okay.
Like the sun. There's rays that are coming off the sun. Are the rays the sun?
No.
No, they're just emanating from the sun. But you can't separate the ray from the sun.
No, you just see the sun.
That's right. Now, the rays are coming in this window, and the rays are coming into the building next door, and the rays are coming in all over the world. The person could think that these rays, are like separate identities. These rays are their own independent unit.
There's the sun, but without the rays.
Without the sun, there's no rays. So you see these rays coming in different places. So you might think, look, this ray is a separate thing. But if you trace the ray back to his source, the ray, if I were to go on a SpaceX journey with you, Mendel,
Stay tuned.
That's right. We start journeying back to where the ray comes from. At a certain point, the ray stops having independent identity, and the ray rejoins the oneness from where he comes from. In other words, even now, the ray is connected to the source, and the ray has all of its energy from the source. It's just from our perspective, the ray looks like something separate from here. But if a person's a bit of a wise man, he starts thinking, where did this ray come from? Creation are the rays coming off of God.
Wow.
So we feel like we're all separate here, we're all doing our own thing. No, start journeying back, to your source, and you realize we're all one.
A lot of this is just a journey back to where we came from.
That's essentially what this world is about, and what the world to come, which we'll have to talk about also at a certain point, is the journey of going back to the sun.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an awesome journey to go on. But the powerful thing
that's the journey we're on.
That's the journey we're on, is really tracing yourself back to source. That's a journey because God is not a sun. The sun is a finite entity. God is infinite. The journey we're going to go on is as a finite, conscious being through our free will, journeying into the infinite for infinity, for eternity. That's going to be an amazing journey. So I usually say to people, the Zohar describes that the people that you're close to in this world, you'll be close to in the world to come. So we're getting ready for what they say long-term relationships. Relationships that we're going to have with people for eternity, going into infinite consciousness for eternity. This is the message that the Jewish people are here to bring the world. We're all going back together into God consciousness. We're here to see that God only wants good. This is a world where we have free will, where we're able to now make decisions to make that journey.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me. What a special first episode this was. Where can people find you?
They can come to Aisha Torah and spend time. We can learn together in person. There's many, many classes online if a person wants to watch. And it's a pleasure, Mendel, to sit together, to grow together.
Thank you. Many more to come.
Thank you very much. We should see a lot of blessing for you,
Amen.
For your family, for the
world.
Entire world. We should see great things for the world. Looking forward to continuing. Looking forward to seeing much, much peace and happiness for all of us. And keep up all your amazing work.
Thank you, Rabbi.